Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Peace and blessings, shalom and barak'u to you and your entire house, wherever your feet are touching the soil. Shabbat shalom to the whole house of YAHUAH'S, all 12 tribes, worldwide, wherever your feet are touching the soil, wherever you are, listening under the sound of my voice. Shabbat shalom to you and your entire house. Shabbat shalom to the elder brother, Yahuwah. Shabbat shalom to the younger brother, Ephraim, otherwise called Ephraim. Shabbat shalom to the former stranger, the former foreigner, who was formerly estranged from the everlasting covenant, but having now received the Ruach, the spirit of adoption, the Ruach HaKadosh, the separated, the set-apart spirit, the Ruach of Yahushua HaMashiach, our Messiah, and whereby now having been engrafted into the olive tree, who is YAHUAH'S, who is Yahushua, and whereby now being privy to the same everlasting covenant and promise and inheritance which was given to YAHUAH'S and to YAHUAH'S alone. Shabbat shalom to you, peace and blessings, shalom and barak'u to you and your entire house on this most kadosh yom, this most separated day, this most special day, in which is not just a day, in which is a sign, a seal, and a mark of the everlasting covenant between Yahuwah and his people. It is the day that identifies us as his covenant people. It is the day that identifies him as the Elohim of creation. Shabbat shalom to you wherever you are, wherever your feet are touching the soil across this flat plain earth, across the four corners of this earth. Shabbat shalom to you and to your house. Peace and blessings, shalom and barak'u to you wherever you are listening under the sound of my voice. To those of you who are on YouTube, once again, we are grateful, we are humbled that Yahuwah has sent you by to listen to his words via this lowly servant, via this lowly dirt vessel, this lowly hunk of dirt. We are humbled and grateful that he has sent you in this muadah, in this appointed time, in this, the consummation of time, the consummation of the times, a time unlike any other, which he has sent you by to hear his words, perhaps to save your life, perhaps to give you a hope and an expectation, perhaps, Barak Yahuwah, perhaps to call you and to invite you into an everlasting covenant with him. If you are here via YouTube and this is your first time listening, this is your first time listening to YAHUAH'S Remnant, and you are asking the question, what is or who is YAHUAH'S Remnant? We can start by telling you who we are not. We are not some church. No, we are not, in the etymology of the word church, we're not some Circe. Circe being the Greek goddess of sorcery and wine. She indeed is the great whore spoken about in Revelation 17. We're not some church. We're not some Circe. We're not some 501(c) organization. We're not some camp, and we're not some ministry. We simply are, who we are. And that is Yahuwah's remnant assembly, his remnant kahal, his remnant ecclesia, which means assembly. We are his remnant assembly in his end times, of which he has gone about the business of sealing us with the seal of the living Elohim. That is the Ruach HaKadosh, sealing us with his name written upon our forehead, sealing us with his very breath, sealing us in an everlasting covenant with him, sealing us, preserving us with the salt of the covenant, salting us and sealing us on board the ark of the covenant with the seal of the living Elohim just in the nick of time. And he's placed a number on those of whom he is sealing in this season, and that is 144,000. He has indeed placed a name of those of whom he is sealing in this season, and that is none other than the house of Yahuwah, the house of his covenant people. Because if you have been listening at any length, you now have the understanding that the house of Yashar, all 12 tribes was once one house, all 12 tribes under one sovereign. But as of the year 722 BCE, 10 of those tribes were scattered amongst the nations, were scattered to the four corners of the nations, and those 10 tribes, in accordance with the Torah, Genesis chapter 48, verse 19, has become the completeness of the nations. In other words, has become every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. Those 10 tribes is the house of Ephraim, Ephraim being firstborn, Ephraim being a representation of the firstborn being Adam, Ephraim being a representation of mankind. Thus we find mankind, Ephraim, coming out of the great distress. Revelation 7, every nation, tribe, tongue, and people having washed their robes in the fires of the great distress. But he has identified a covenant people, a remnant people. There is always a remnant, as there were 8 righteous beings of the remnant of mankind that was saved from the proverbial waters of distress that came upon the earth to distress the earth, to judge the earth, as the wrath of Yahuwah was poured out on 700,000 beings during the time of Nimrod. But he reserved for himself 8 righteous beings to be saved from the hour of trial that came upon the earth at that time. His covenant people, yes, they were in covenant with him. And he renewed that covenant after the flood waters, went down upon the earth. He renewed that covenant, that covenant with a sign of the covenant, the sign of a rainbow. He renewed that covenant with creation of all those beings that were upon that ark. He renewed his covenant. He always renews his covenant with a remnant. Barak Yahuwah. And in this time, in this season, he is going about the business of renewing the everlasting covenant with a remnant people. A remnant house of Yahuwah, who was never divorced from him, although scattered amongst the four corners of the earth, although scattered as of the year 70 AD, although scattered amongst every nation, tribe, and tongue, was never divorced. Sent away, put away, but never divorced. He is going about the business in this season of sending forth his ruach, of sending forth breath, of sending forth life, of sending forth the seal of the living Elohim, as a greater separation is going on in this season, sealing his people, his remnant people, his covenant people, true Yahuwah, with the seal of the living Elohim upon their forehead, to deliver and save them from the hour of trial that is soon to come upon this earth, that is soon to overcome all the earth. This is who we are. This is who Yahuwah's remnant assembly is. This is who this channel was dedicated to. And he sent his servant to proclaim his Torah. To whomever has ears to hear, eyes to see, and a heart to understand. He has sent his servant to turn the hearts of the children back to the fathers, and the hearts of the fathers back to the children. Thus he come with sudden destruction to destroy this wicked earth. This is who we are. We are Yahuwah's remnant assembly. And if these words resonate with you, and if you are watching and gathering with us, then perhaps you too are Yahuwah's remnant. Because indeed his sheep hear his voice, and another voice they will not follow. Perhaps you too are indeed Yahuwah's remnant. If you are, and if you have a desire to gather a fellowship with us live, either on our 4th day gatherings or during our Shabbat gatherings, once this teaching, this proclamation, this message has been uploaded to YouTube, there in the description box of this video will be an email address of which you are welcome to use to contact us if you have a desire to fellowship with us live. Even if you do not have a desire to fellowship with us live, we encourage you to use that email address because we would genuinely love to hear from you. We genuinely would. Yes, we would. We would genuinely and sincerely love to hear from you. Whether you have a desire to fellowship with us or not, we would love to hear from you. Nevertheless, this is who we are. This is who we are, and we're here now gathered on YAHUWAH'S most Kadosh Yom. We are YAHUWAH'S Remnant Assembly. And I am Dawood ben Yahuwah, and this is my Aisha, otherwise called wife, Ashayah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to you. Shabbat Shalom to you and your house, wherever you are listening under the sound of my voice, wherever you are to the four corners of this flat plain earth. Shabbat Shalom to you. Peace and blessings. Shalom and Barak to you and your entire house. There is a word from the Master. There is a word from the Master for his remnant people. He has sent me to a remnant people because even if you are amongst the nations right now and outside of covenant with him, far away from fellowship and far away from being a citizen, a fellow citizen of Yahshua, even if you have not come back into the everlasting covenant with him, but if you decide to come back into an everlasting covenant with him, then you too will become remnant people. He sent me to you. He sent me to those who have eyes to see, whom he has given eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart to understand. He has not sent me to anyone else. He sent me to his remnant people and his remnant people alone. Because indeed his sheep hear his voice and another voice they will not follow. These words will resonate with them and they will in turn do what is necessary, and they will govern themselves accordingly to do what is required of them to escape the hour of trial that is soon to come upon this earth. He sent me to his remnant people and to his remnant people alone. However, he has sent me by for a word for with a word for the nations today as well. Just a brief word. Just a brief word for the nations. He has sent me by with a brief word for the nations. For those of you who are of the nations, before we get into that word, if you're taking notes, today's teaching is entitled Searching for the Ancient Path, Part 91. Searching for the Ancient Part 91. The greatest separation, it has begun. It has begun. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief will save your life in this season. True belief is going to save your life. Searching for the Ancient Path, Part 91. And this is indeed a continuation of what the path that the Master has had us on. I don't know if there's a more important message in this season. All of them have been equally important. But without belief, it is impossible to please him. Before we can come to him, we must first believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them who diligently seek him. If we truly believe, then we will bear the fruit of that belief. We will bear the fruit of righteousness. In other words, if we believe the Torah, if we believe the word, then we will obey it, and we will bear the fruit of righteousness that will not only lead us to Mount Zion, but that will also lead to everlasting life. Searching for the Ancient Path, Part 91. Indeed, there are many who say that they believe. There are many who say that they truly believe, but as soon as they open their mouths, for out of the overflow of the mouth, the heart, the mouth speaks. As soon as they open their mouths, then they identify themselves, and you know this one is not in covenant with him. Or as soon as you see that you're able to lay eyes upon their fruit, that you're able to lay eyes upon their actions or their inactions, the discernment that the Master has placed in you has shown you that no, this one is not in covenant with the Master. And it is important to have this discernment in this season. Lest you yoke yourselves with the wrong ones and you be led to the valley of oh no, where you will be declaring, oh no, how did I end up here? Wearing shorts and flip-flops and a tank top and it's cold outside. So it's important to understand who is in covenant with the master and who is not, so that you can understand that we are not to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what part has light with darkness? And what fellowship hath Belial wickedness with the Mashiach? Wherefore come out from among them. Be ye separate and touch not the unclean thing, and he will receive you. And so belief has always separated the righteous from the unrighteous. And this understanding is so paramount in this season that it goes without words. I have not the words to associate with the importance of the understanding that belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous, and we must be separate as this greater separation is occurring in the midst of the earth. As a remnant, 144,000 worldwide are being separated unto life, and 7+ billion people are separated unto death. As death is getting ready to manifest himself and put on flesh and come to this earth and claim what is his. The counterpart of Yahuwah, Hasatan, the devil. As Yahuwah is life, he is death. As Yahuwah is light, he is darkness. As Yahuwah is righteousness, he is unrighteousness. As Yahuwah is Torah, he is Torahlessness. He is coming back soon to gather what is his and the fires of the great distress. He is coming back to gather unbelievers. The righteous believe, the unrighteous unbelieve. Thus the nations are unbelievers. Thus the nations need signs and wonders. Signs and wonders are for the unbelievers. But the Torah and the writing and the prophets are for those who believe. And thus, as it has always been, belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. Searching for the ancient path, part 91. The greater separation has begun. There was a separation that occurred during the time of Noah, when 8 righteous beings was separated from 700,000+ unbelievers. Wicked one. This is not something new. We're talking about the ancient path here. This is not something new. Belief has always been a part of the ancient path. And as it applies to this season, it will save your life. It would have saved their lives then, had they only believed. And had the fruit of belief, which is obedience. Their lives would have been saved as well. And in this season, as the great distress is fastly approaching, and if you have the discernment of a gnat, you understand this. A gnat will fly away from danger. Yes, he will. He will discern when danger approaches, and he will fly away from it. So if you have the discernment of a gnat, you understand that this is the consummation of the times. That this is the book of Revelation. That this is the final generation. This is it. This is the final generation. And judgment and wrath is even at the door. But he sent his servant by as a voice crying out in the wilderness, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, and the hearts of the children back to the fathers, to turn your wicked hearts back to Torah, back to belief, back to obedience of his righteous Torah. Searching for the ancient path, part 91. The greater separation has begun. True belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief will save your life in this season. True belief will save your life. He sent me by with a brief word, just a brief word for the nations before we get into line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, with regards to the title of this message. He sent me by with a brief word for you, because he has not sent me to the nations. He's not sent me to the Gentiles. He sent me to his covenant people. Even when he sends me amongst the Gentiles, he's sending me to his covenant people. Because his covenant people will hear him, and another voice they will not follow. Even those amongst the Gentiles, even those amongst the nations, even those amongst the unbelievers. He sent me with a brief word for you. And that word is nations. Torah governs all. Torah always has governed all, and Torah always will govern all things according to his righteous Torah. All things according to his righteous Torah. Torah governs both the things that are on earth and the things that are under the earth and the things that are under that are above in Shamayim. Torah governs both the seen and the unseen. Torah governs everything. All things according to Torah. Torah is the eternal word, the infallible word, the engrafted word of Yahuwah Al Shaddai. In the beginning was the Torah. And the Torah was with Elohim, and the Torah was Elohim. Torah is Yahuwah, and he governs all things according to him, all things according to the Torah. In the beginning, after the fall of man, in Genesis chapter 3, around the 16th verse there it says, "Woman, because you have obeyed the serpent, and you have not obeyed the voice of the master. You have not obeyed the righteous Torah. You have not obeyed the voice of your husband. In pain now, woman, shalt thou bring forth children. And thy desire shall be for your husband. And he does rule over you." And he does rule over you. Understand that this has a physical implication, and it has a spiritual implication. We must understand the difference between the spirit of Torah and the letter of Torah. The spirit of Torah, the letter of Torah says what it says. Woman, because you did what you did, in pain shalt thou bring forth children, and thy desire shall be for your husband, and he does rule over you. He is to become your master. He is to become your master, and you are to become his servant. He is to rule over you, and you are to become his servant, and he is to become your master. Understand the spiritual context here, however, of this simplified instruction given to children to teach us about deeper spiritual matters. Understand that he desires for us to have that desire for him. The desire that a woman has for a husband, he desires for us to have that type of desire for him. He desires for us to have that desire, but even at a greater length for him. For him. But I draw your attention to the fact that it says that he does rule over you. He becomes your master. You become his servant. Understand this in context. A servant doesn't choose his master. A master chooses his servant. Thus it is written, if a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing and receives favor from Yahuwah. A woman doesn't find her husband. She is found because a master finds his servant. Not only does a master find his servant, but a master must purchase his servant. No one volunteers to be a servant. No one volunteers to be a bondservant. A bondservant, a slave, must be purchased. A master purchases his servant. Thus, a marriage, a abrit marriage, a true Hebrew marriage, a true Torah marriage begins with a purchase. It begins with a bride's price. It begins with a man purchasing his bride, purchasing his servant. He does rule over her. It begins with him purchasing her. Yes, it does. That's in the Torah. And the Torah is eternal. That's in the Torah. It begins with a bride's price. It begins with a bride's price. We see a shadow of this bride's price taking place in the land of Egypt. When a bride's price was paid there in the land of Egypt, when there was a shadow of something to come that happened in the land of Egypt. When the master gave instructions through his servant Masha declared on this night, on the 14th of Abib, on this night you are to slay the lamb at evening. And you are to take his blood and dip hyssop in it. And you are to smear your doorpost with that blood, with the dung. And you're not to leave your houses until morning. You're to roast that lamb in fire. You're to cook it wholly. You're not to break not one of his bones. And you are to consume that lamb wholly by morning. And all that is not consumed, you are to burn it with fire. Now, those of you on Zoom, you've heard this, and we're not going to go into detail about that. I draw your attention to the purchase, to the bride's price that was paid that night. The bride's price that was paid to redeem a bride from a hand that was stronger than her. A bride's price that was paid to seize a bride from a man that had seized her. A man that was stronger than her. She being the weaker vessel and could not fight back because this man had overpowered her. A bride's price was paid to redeem his bride. As it is written in the Torah, if your brother falls on hard times and sells himself into slavery, sells himself into bondage, sells himself into Egypt, then your brother who is able, he does redeem him. He does redeem him. He may, the text doesn't declare that he might, that he may, that he could. The text declared that he does redeem him. He redeems him from bondage and he restores his possessions to him. He restores his lands, his houses, his possessions to him. His brother who is able, he does redeem him. He does redeem him. So we see duality going on here in the land of Egypt. But I draw your attention back to a bride's price. Redeemed from a hand that was stronger than them. A bride's price was paid, not one with perishable items such as silver and gold, but a bride's price was paid with blood. A bride's price was paid, and all those who had been purchased in blood, all those who had been redeemed, all of those whom a bride's price had been paid for, when death came upon the land, they were delivered from the hand of death, because it is the hand of death of whom they were delivered from. The only way to deliver someone from death is to pour life into them, as the life of the creature is his blood. And the only one to resurrect someone from the dead and to redeem them from death, from the dead, from being a dead and stinking thing, is to pour life into them, is to pour blood into them. So a bride's price was paid for a people there in the land of Egypt, being a shadow. And those whom had been purchased were led out of the land of Egypt, were led out of bondage, were led from a hand that was stronger than theirs. Down through the Red Sea till they got to Mount Sinai, at the base of Mount Sinai, on the day of Shabbat, the Feast of Weeks, the day in which the everlasting covenant is renewed, the day of the wedding feast, Shabbat. Where there was a wedding feast done on that day, because Shabbat is a feast day. Not only was there a wedding feast, but there was the exchanging of vows and what we call the 10 words, the 10 dabarim. And as they proclaimed to Masha, because they were afraid to speak to Yahuwah, every word that Yahuwah has spoken, we shall do. Thus the Abrahamic marriage cycle, the process for the marriage cycle is revealed here. There must be a purchase, because he does rule over you. There then must be the exchanging of vows before witnesses, as Masha called heaven and earth to witness against our people. And then there must be a wedding feast, the marriage supper of the Lamb. Afterwards, there must be the consummation of the marriage. The two then become one flesh in accordance with the righteous Torah. Wherefore a man shall leave his mother and father's house and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. After the marriage process has been followed. But I draw your attention once more to a purchase and how Torah declares that a wife must be purchased, a bride's price must be paid for her, thus establishing a legal framework, thus establishing a legal precedence for our redemption, for the purchase of his bride. It's written. If it's written, it must come to pass. And no devil in hell can do anything about it. If it's written, it must come to pass, as Torah governs both the earth and the things under the earth and the things in Shamayim. It governs all. It's written that a bride's price must be paid, nations. A bride's price must be paid, and a bride's price has been paid in accordance with the Torah. A bride's price has been paid for all men, for all mankind, for the nations, for the Gentiles, for all men, for all the earth. A bride's price, nations, has been paid. Yes, it has. A heavy bride's price, one of suffering, one of death, one of pain, one of the outpouring of all of his life, all of his blood upon the ground has been paid. A bride's price has been paid. And in accordance with the Torah, once a bride's price has been paid and the wife, the person, has been purchased, the man then owns her. He is now her master. He has purchased her. He is her master, and she is his servant. As Yahuwah is my master, Yahusha is my master, and I am his servant. He has purchased me. He has a right to me. Hear him. He has a right to me because he has bought me. And I am no longer my own. I am his because he has bought me. As he has bought all men, whether you accept this truth or not is of no consequence. He has a legal right to you, nations, because he has bought you. He has purchased you. He has purchased the bride. He has purchased the bride. Whether you accept this truth or not, it is of no consequence, nations. It doesn't matter. He has bought you. He has purchased you. Yes, he has. And you now belong to him. You now belong to him. So what does that mean? That means now your husband rules over you, and that means that what? That you must submit to him, that you must obey him. Yes, you do. He's your master. You must obey him. Wives, submit to your husbands. Wives, submit to your husbands. You must obey him. He is your ruler. He now does rule over you. You must submit to him. Your life is not your own anymore. He has purchased you, provided that he has purchased you. And thus now it is said, now your body, wife, is no longer your own. Your body is no longer your own because he has purchased you. He is your master. He is the ruler over you. Husband, your body is not your own. Because in accordance with the Torah, you cannot deny her marital rights. You cannot deny her food, her clothing, and her marital rights. Neither your bodies are your own, as our husband gave up his body for us. Yes, he did. He gave up his body for his wife, and he purchased his wife with blood and not with perishable items such as silver and gold. But let's talk about the Torah now. It's established. A bride's price is paid, and you belong to him. Whether you accept it or not, nations, you are his. He has bought you. This is established in the Torah. He has paid a bride's price for you. And in the Torah, it reads in the 22nd chapter of Deuteronomy, if a maiden, if a virgin is found in the field and seized by a man, hear him, is found in the field and seized by a man. Little one, are we not in the field of the earth? Yes, we are in the field of the earth. It's not the harvest white and ready for harvesting, but the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. The laborers are few. Isn't that what the text says? The earth is a field. The earth is a field. Understand the spiritual context here. If a maiden is found in the field of the earth, and she is seized by a man, let me go back. If a maiden who is betrothed to a man, who is engaged to a man, a bride's price has been paid for her. There's not been the exchanging of vows yet. There's not been a wedding feast. There's not been the consummation of the marriage. But she has been purchased. She has been betrothed. The Torah says, if a maiden who has been betrothed to a man is found in the field of the earth, and is seized by one more powerful than her, it's seized by a man because the woman is the weaker vessel. We are the weaker vessel. I pray you get the context. We are weaker than he. He seizes her and lies with her. Then the Torah declares that both of them are to die. The man, because he has humbled another man's wife. And the woman, because she did not cry out. Because she did not cry out. You see, in Egypt, little one, when that woman began to cry out, she cried out, did she not? She cried out, and deliverance came to her. See, you're supposed to cry out, woman. If you're seized by one stronger than you in the field of the earth, you're required to cry out because you belong to another. And when the woman cried out in Egypt, the master sent a deliverer. But if you don't cry out, woman, if you don't cry out, the text declares that the man, both the man and the woman are going to die. The man because he has humbled another man's wife. And the woman because she did not cry out. But when a bride's price is paid, the woman is purchased. A man has found his wife. A man has purchased a servant. She then belongs to him. She is his wife, even before the other steps. As we find in the book of Matthew, chapter 1, nations. After Maryam had conceived of child via the Ruach HaKodesh, via the set-apart spirit, the text declares that she was betrothed to Yahuwah. She was engaged to him, and having conceived and come and having conceived and the Ruach came upon her and she conceived of child and Yahuwah, in another further down in the text it says Yahuwah being her husband, being a righteous man, thought to divorce her privately so as to not to make a public spectacle of her. Once a purchase, a bride's price has been paid, we belong to our husband. And the Torah declares, here in the field of this earth, as a bride's price has been paid, nations, whether you accept it or not, you belong to him. If one stronger than you, whose name is Hasatan, aka the devil, that man seizes you in the field of the earth, and you do not cry out to the master for deliverance, to save you from one stronger than you, both the man and you, in accordance with the righteous Torah, are going to die in the eternal lake of fire, which is called the second death. You're going to die. You're going to die in the eternal lake of fire, which is the second death. Both the man, Hasatan, is going to die, and you, woman, are going to die because you did not cry out. You belong to him. You have no choice. You're his bride. You have no choice. He has purchased your nations. Whether you like it or not, he's purchased you. And if you continue to lay with that man, whose name is Hasatan, or the devil, and you do not cry out, you're going to die. Both you and him are going to die in accordance with Revelation 20. You're going to die in the second death, the eternal lake of fire, eternal separation from Yahuwah. You're going to die. You're going to die. He is that man. Hasatan is that man. You are that woman, nations. Our husband is Yahushua. A bride's price has been paid, not with one of silver and gold, but with his very own shed dam. He has purchased the bride. He owns us. He owns us. We are his. We are his bride. And to give you further understanding, nations, as to Hasatan is that man. He is that man. Get some understanding. Hear him, please. Give us that first precept, little one.
Isaiah 14, 12 to 16.
Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 to 16. Beginning at verse 12. Read, little one.
How you have fallen from the heavens, O Halal, son of the morning.
Yeah.
You have been cut down to the ground. You who lay low the nations. For you have said in your heart, let me go up to the heavens.
Yes.
Let me raise my throne above the stars of all. And let me sit in the mount of appointment on the sides of the north. Let me go up above the heights of the clouds.
Yeah.
Let me be like Yahuwah. But you are brought down to Sheol.
But you are brought down to the pit. Come on, read.
To the sides of the pit.
To the sides of the pit. Read.
Those who see you stare at you.
Those that see you stare at you.
And ponder over you.
And ponder over you. Read.
Saying, is this the man who made the earth?
Is this who?
Is this the man who made the earth?
Is this the man? Is this the man? Is this the man? Read.
Who made the earth tremble? Who shook reins?
Who shook reins? He is that man, woman. You are the woman. He has purchased you with a bride's price. You are his, and you are in the field of the earth. This man, who is stronger than you, has seized you, nations. And if you do not cry out, both the man and you are going to die in the eternal lake of fire. He is that man. Everything is ordained of the Torah. Torah governs both the seen and the unseen, both the things that are on earth and the things below the earth and the things above the earth. Torah governs all. A bride's price has been paid. Out of the mouth of two or more witnesses, let every matter be established. Give us another precept, little one.
Revelation 21, 16 to 17.
Revelation 21, 16 through 17. Revelation 21, verses 16 through 17. Read, little one.
And the city lies four cornered. And its length is as great as its breadth. And he measured the city with the rod. Yes. 12,000 stadia. Yeah. The length and the breadth and height of it are equal. Yes. And he measured its walls. 144 forearms. 144 forearms. 144. 144. 144. 144 forearms. Come on. According to the measure of a man. According to the measure of who? Of a man. Of a man. Read. That is of a messenger. That is of a messenger. Hasatan. Not only that, there's more than one Hasatan. We have more than one adversary. There's more than one fallen one. And they are that man. They are that man and you are that woman in the field of the earth. You have been patrolled. He owns us. We are his bride. We are his bride. He owns us. And that man that is stronger than us, because we are the weaker vessel, if we do that, cry out in the field of this earth as our ancestors cried out in Egypt, both the woman and the man are going to die. The man, because he has humbled another man's wife. The master has purchased us with his blood. He owns man now. Whereas Hasatan owned them at first because Adam gave mankind over to him. He has come down as the kinsman redeemer and redeemed his wife, redeemed his bride, redeemed mankind with his very own shed blood. A high price has been paid. Whether you receive him or not, he's your husband. He's your husband. He's your owner. He's your ruler. He's your master. you continue to lay with that man. You continue to lay with Hasatan and all of the adversaries, and you do not cry out. As it is ordained, that man gonna die. He's automatically gonna die. His place is the eternal lake of fire. There is no repentance for Hasatan, just as there is no repentance for the man that seizes this maiden. But the maiden here has an out. She has an out, and that is to cry out. Yes, it is. That is to cry out. If the maiden cries out, there is deliverance for her. If she does not cry out, there is no deliverance for her. She's going to die with Hasatan. She's going to die with the man. Both the man and the woman are going to die. So now that you have the understanding that you purchased, you blood bought, he owns you. Whether you admit it or not, whether you accept it or not, it has no consequence. The Torah governs you. And at the great white throne, the books are going to be open. The books of the Torah are going to be open. And every man going to be judged according to the righteous Torah. If you did not cry out, both you and that man going to die in the eternal lake of fire in the second death. You're going to die. You're going to die. And so, nations, the master has been calling you to the threshing floor. He's been calling you to an intimate place. You have the understanding now. You belong to him. You're his bride. He has purchased you. The master has been calling you now to the threshing floor, to an intimate place called the threshing floor. The threshing floor is where a woman goes to find her husband. The threshing floor is where Ruth went to find her husband, is where she went to find her kinsman redeemer, as she went and she laid at his feet. She uncovered him and covered herself with his covering. Symbolic of the duty, the responsibility of a man, and that is to cover his wife. That is to cover her, to cover the shame of Egypt, to cover the degradation of Egypt, to cover her nakedness, to cover her sin, to cover her from when she partook of the fruit, to cover her shame. This is the duty of a husband. As it is written in the Torah, a man must provide three things for his wife: food, clothing, and marital rights. And so Ruth went down to the feet of her kinsman redeemer, uncovered him, symbolically saying it, that you are my covering, you are my kinsman redeemer, and you shall redeem me. You shall marry me. So the threshing floor is a place where you go to find a husband. It is where you go to seek out your husband, to grab a sheet, to go to a secluded place in your house, to lay there prostrate and to cover yourself at the feet of your husband, because he indeed is your husband. The difference between you and Ruth is that Ruth had not yet been purchased at that point. You have already been purchased. You have already been bought. And so now your body, it is not your own. Your body belongs to him. You cannot deny him marital rights. You cannot deny him carnal rights as a man enters a woman, because you've been purchased. You can't deny him. Your body's not your own. The problem is, many of you are not crying out. You'd rather have relations, carnal relations, with a man that's not yours, rather than cry out and go to the threshing floor, grab your cover, and lay at the feet of your kinsman redeemer and declare to him that you are my husband. I recognize your right as my husband. My body is not my own. You have purchased me. I am covering myself in your covering. Cover me with your righteous. Come and have relations with me. He has a right to have relations with you. He's purchased you. He has a right now to enter you as a man enters a woman. He has a right to enter you because he has bought you. He has purchased you. Many of you, You still don't grasp this concept of the Torah. Your body ain't your own. He has purchased you. And because you don't understand this concept of the Torah, you're going to find yourself fitting the description of Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23. Many in that day will say, Master, Master, have I not prophesied in your name? Cast out devils in your name? Perform many miracles in your name? The text declares, he would declare that day, depart from me, I never knew you. I never knew you, you who work lawlessness. You who work lawlessness. You can't know the master and work lawlessness. Now, new there is a Hebrew idiom. The Greek there is a Hebrew idiom, and it means to know someone carnally, as a man knows a woman, as Adam knew Kua, and she conceived and bore Cain. He had known you. You have denied him his marital rights, not understanding that your body ain't your own, and you have denied your husband his marital rights, and he has never known you. He's never entered you as a man enters a woman. He has not established his covenant with you because you denied him his rights, nations. You denied him his rights. Now understand this, he won't come and make himself one with a whore. He won't come and make himself one with a prostitute. He won't come and make himself one with someone who is unclean. And thus through the mouth of Kapha, called Peter, in the second chapter of Acts, verse 38, it reads, repent, repent, nations. You've heard his word. Repent, Tashuba, he has bought you, he has purchased you. Repent and obey the voice of your master. Obey the voice of your husband. Turn back to Torah. This is the voice of your master. This is the word. This is the word of Elohim. Obey the word of your master. Obey the voice of your master. Obey the voice of your husband. He has purchased you. Repent, turn from your wickedness. Turn from your uncleanness. I cry out because you've been sealed in the field. You've been seized in the field of the earth. Cry out to your husband, your deliverer. Repent, Tashuba, it says there, and then be immersed in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach for the forgiveness of sins. To be immersed in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach is to fulfill the judgment that was spoken over Adam and Kua, that was spoken over mankind, the judgment of death, and that of every tree of the garden you may partake of, except of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For the day in which you partake of that tree is the day that you will die. They partook of the fruit, and death entered upon the head of all mankind. And so our kinsman redeemer came as mankind. Yes, he did. He came as the second Adam. Adam meaning mankind. He came as firstborn. He came as mankind, taking the punishment of death for us. And thus, when we are immersed in his name by belief, then this penalty of death is paid. Indeed, because the wages of sin is death, when we are immersed in his Kadosh name by belief, this penalty is paid. Because when we are immersed in his name, in the name of Yahushua, by belief and through belief, it is the greatest separation. Belief is. We are being impaled with him, and thus dying with him, and thus bleeding with him, and thus being buried with him, and thus being resurrected to the newness of life as a renewed creature. Thus it reads, if any man be in Mashiach is a renewed creature, old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become renewed. We have then been renewed all the way back, and there's been a resetting all the way back to the garden. It is as though the master has reached back down into the soil of that garden and breathe into that dirt, the breath of lives. When you die to the flesh, when you die with the Mashiach and having that penalty of death paid and resurrected to the newness of life. Thus, and the text goes on to say, then receive the promise of the Ruach HaKadosh. For the promise is to you and those who are far off, for as many as Yahuwah, our Elohim, shall call. He will not lie with a whore, nations. He would not lie with a whore. He's purchased you with a great price, bride's price. He suffered for you. From the third hour, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., he suffered. He suffered unlike you can imagine. He suffered and poured out all his life. He poured out all his blood upon the ground in accordance with Torah for you, in order to pour life into your dead body, to resurrect you from the dead, because you were dead because of transgression. You were dead because of the sin of Adam. You were dead, stinking thing. And if you don't recognize his right as your husband, and go down to the threshing floor, to that intimate place, and cover yourself up and have relations with him, having the breath of life poured into you, having the seal of the living Elohim written upon your forehead, nations, then you're still a dead, stinking thing. And because you are a dead, stinking thing, death, the person whom the man, whom Adam sold the right, whom Adam sold the rights to the earth, and sold himself to in servitude, that man, Hasatan, the devil, death, whom is soon to come upon this earth, is going to have a legal right to you, to destroy your flesh, so that and to judge you as the bowl of wrath, as the wrath of Yahuwah is poured out upon his wife, upon his bride, to judge you, to purge you, to cleanse you, to purify you, to make you ready for your husband. But he does not desire that you have to go through that, nations. Understand that you belong to him now. You are his bride. A bride's price has been paid, whether you accept it or not. This is the Torah. And if you don't cry out, both you and that man are going to die. You're going to die. Go down to the threshing floor at the feet of your husband, kinsman redeemer. He has a right to you. The marriage rights are his. He has a right to enter you, to lie with you, because he's purchased you. Go down to the threshing floor, that intimate place. Cover yourself. First, repent. Because as spoken, he will not lay with a whore. He won't lay with a whore. He will not lay with a whore. He is pure. He is unclean. He's clean, rather. He's undefiled. He's righteous. He's Yahuwah. He will not lay with a whore. Repent. Allow the washing of the word to cleanse you. Be immersed in his name. Go down to that threshing floor, that intimate place. Invite him to have relations with you, because he has a right to, and you can't deny him. Your body is not your own, woman. Your body is not your own. It belongs to your husband. He purchased you with a bride's price. He is your master. He rules over you. You've heard thus says Yahuwah this day, nations. Take heed or not. You've heard thus says Yahuwah, whether you hear, whether you forbear. You've heard thus says Yahuwah. Line upon line now. Precept upon precept. Here a little, there a little. Searching for the ancient path, part 91. The greatest separation has begun. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief will save your life in this season. We picked this back up. We read the book of Daniel, the 3rd chapter, last Shabbat. This Shabbat, we're going to read just a little bit in Daniel chapter 3 again to establish or reestablish continuity, because the next precept from that, there's a witness to show that there is nothing new under the sun, that what happened before is going to happen again. And so to establish continuity, more so for the nations, we're going to read just a little bit in Daniel chapter 3, because this now speaks of a captivity here in Daniel chapter 3. And although we are in a captivity of the nations, there's a harsher captivity that's coming when death puts on flesh, when Hasatan, the man of lawlessness, puts on flesh and comes to this earth to gather and to capture what is his, and that is the flesh. That is the unclean, wicked flesh of those who are not part of the greater separation, 144,000 who've been separated unto life from death. Daniel chapter 3, little one's going to begin at verse 1, and she's going to read until I tell her to stop. Daniel chapter 3. Daniel chapter 3, beginning at verse 1. Come on, read, little one.
Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign, made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babal. And sovereign Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the viceroys, the nobles, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the viceroys, the nobles, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald loudly proclaimed, to you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of instruments, you shall fall down and do obeisance, to the gold image, that sovereign Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and do obeisance, is immediately thrown into the midst of a burning furnace of fire.
You can stop right there. This takes place in the land of Babylon. But what you need to understand, to those who are near and to those who are far off, Nebuchadnezzar was not the founder of Babylon. There are certain instances in scriptures that are there as a shadow to future generations, as warnings and shadows to future generations of what is to come. Babylon, was originally founded by Nimrod, or Nimrod, the 13th from Adam, 13 being the number of rebellion. Nimrod or Nimrod, his name alone means rebellion. Rebellion otherwise means lawlessness. He is the man of lawlessness. He is the founder of Babel. He is the founder of Babylon. It is he whom every nation, tribe, and tongue is currently worshiping. Whether they know it or realize it or not, they are worshiping him. He is the progenitor of religion. Hashatan created religion through him. He is the first man to be worshipped in the entire earth as Elohim. He was worshipped as the Son. Every nation, tribe, tongue, and people worshiped Nimrod. They worshiped him as the Son. They worshiped him. They did obeisance to him. Indeed, this image is of him. This image is of him. They worshiped him. They worshiped him. He was the man responsible for dragging the whole earth into rebellion after the earth had been cleansed via the cleansing waters of the great flood. He drew the earth back into rebellion. He was the first anti-Messiah. He will be the last anti-Messiah. He is the first and he is the last. He was killed. He was beheaded in some reports by Esau or Ashur, and some reports by Shem or Sham. He was beheaded. He received a deadly wound to the head. He was killed. He was beheaded. He was the first and the Messiah. He will be the last. He was the first to be worshipped in the entire world. He is that image. He is every image that is erected in this earth. He is every religious image that is erected in this earth, whether it is a cross or an obelisk or a Buddha. Whatever it is, he is that image. Or whether it is a crescent and a star, he is that image. It is Nimrod. It is Nimrod. It is the man of rebellion. It is the man of lawlessness. This is Nimrod, the founder of Babylon, the first and the last, the first anti-Mashiach, the last anti-Mashiach. And the master has sent me by with a word for the nations, because you're going to see him again. You're going to see him again. You're going to see the man of lawlessness, the man of rebellion, Nimrod, whose name means rebellion, who's the 13th from Adam. 13th being the number of rebellion. You're going to see him again. And the same thing is going to happen again, nations. The same thing is going to happen again. You're going to be proven. You're going to be tested again. Because you refuse to lay at the master's feet now. You refuse to humble yourself and receive him as your husband now. To recognize his right as your husband. To turn from your rebellion. To turn from your stiff-neckedness. To turn from your pride now. To humble yourself into obedience unto him. Because you refuse Ephraim. Because you are the nations. You are the Gentiles, Ephraim. You are every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. Because you refuse now. Because you refuse to turn from your folly now, Ephraim. You're going to be proven in the fires of the great distress. If you fail, Ephraim, if you fail, if your belief fails, Ephraim, and you bow to the image like these people bow, like every nation, tribe, and tongue bow to this image, your names will not be written in the Lamb's book of life. Because you've joined yourself to another man, Ephraim. You didn't cry out, Ephraim. You didn't cry out when that man who is mightier than you sees you, because a man is naturally mightier or stronger than a woman. Thus the woman is the weaker vessel. You didn't cry out in the field of the earth, Ephraim. You didn't cry out when that man seized you. And because you didn't cry out, both you and the man are going to die. He desires for you to escape the hour of trial. But since your ears are stopped up and your neck is stiff and you're still hard of heart, hear his words. There is nothing new under the sun. This is going to happen again, and you're going to be proven again in captivity when this comes upon the earth again in a short while. Revelation 13. Do not think that this is coincidence. 13 being the number of rebellion. Revelation 13 reveals the man of rebellion. Yes, it does. It reveals the man of rebellion. It reveals the man of lawlessness, who is Nimrod, who is Nimrod, who was the one who was and who was not, and who is yet to come, who suffered a deadly wound to the head and was healed. He, the man of rebellion, the son of Hasatan, of whom Hasatan himself is going to dwell in. Death becoming flesh, to come and persecute all flesh, because you refuse to heed the words of the master during this time, this Moedah, this appointed time of the greater separation. You refuse to heed his word. You refuse to believe them. You refuse to believe them. If you believe them, then you will naturally obey. To believe is to obey. One doesn't obey unless they believe. Thus, belief separates the righteous from the righteous during this greater separation. And true belief, even in this season, even before what we're getting ready to read takes place, true belief is going to save your life. Perhaps belief will save your life during the great distress when it comes upon the earth. I don't know. The word declares 10 are going to be left to a city. 10. The word declares if those days are not short, then no flesh is going to remain. because you refuse to heed his warning. You refuse to go to the threshing floor. You refuse to acknowledge his right as your husband. You refuse to submit to your husband. You refuse to have relations with your husband, to invite him in as a man enters a woman, whereby entering into covenant with her, and whereby him entering into covenant with us, and whereby being sealed with the seal of the living Elohim, whereby being kept from the hour of trial that is soon to come upon this earth. Revelation 13, little one, beginning at verse 1, read.
And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads names of blasphemy. And the beast I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear,
yes,
and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power.
And the dragon gave him his power because the dragon is going to inhabit him. He's going to inhabit his flesh. This is how we get understand. We don't have power of our own. We have power because he is in us and we are in him. He, being Yahuwah al-Shaddai, Almighty, dwells in us. This is where our power comes from. Through him. And Nimrod's power is going to come when Hasatan indwells his flesh. And because he is going to indwell in his flesh, he's going to operate in signs and wonders unlike the earth has ever seen before. Because the earth has been given to flesh. And because he's going to indwell flesh, he's going to operate in signs and wonders unlike the earth has ever seen. This is for the unbelieving nations. This is for the Gentiles. Because you're unbelieving, Ephraim. Because you're unbelieving, Gentiles, nations. He's going to operate in these signs and wonders, and you're going to believe him. The signs and wonders are for unbelievers. But the Torah, the writing, and the prophets are for the believing. If you've heard the Torah spoken this day with respect to bride's prices and he having a legal right to us. You've heard. Either you believe the Torah or you don't. If you believe, you're going to go down to the threshing floor. Cover yourself. Seek to have relations with your husband, with your master. Submitting yourself unto him. Submitting your body unto him. Because your body is not your own. You cannot deny him what's rightfully his. You cannot deny him marital rights. They are his. He has purchased you. If you believe the Torah and you believe what has been spoken, you'll go down to the threshing floor. But here now, this is a time for unbelievers here. What we're reading here. This is a time for unbelievers. Thus, signs and wonders are going to go forth unlike the earth has ever seen. And many unbelievers are going to believe. And your names will not be written in the Lamb's book of life. Because you're going to believe the lie. You're going to believe the lie. Because you look for signs. You look for wonders. The Torah, the prophets, the writings is not enough for you. Thus, your unbelieving heart are going to believe that this anti-Messiah, this anti-Mashiach is actually the Mashiach, and you're going to bow to him. You're going to worship him. You're going to do obeisance to him. Just as every nation, tribe, and tongue kneel to the image of Nebuchadnezzar, which is Nimrod. You're going to bow to an image again. Come on, read.
And his throne and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as having been slain to death.
This is Nimrod. He was beheaded. He was beheaded. And he is the one coming up out of the pit. Come on, read.
And his deadly wound was healed.
Yes.
And all the earth marveled after the beast.
And all the earth marveled after the beast. If you read Revelation 17, it talks about this same beast who was and was not yet is, and who received a deadly wound from the head, is coming up out of the pit. He's coming up. His body in many circles has already been found. They've already found his body, and according to many, his body is perfectly preserved. The body of Nimrod, of whom goes by many names in many different languages. He goes by God and Wudan and Gudan. He goes by Osiris and Baal and Malak. He goes by Zeus and the resurrected Nimrod going by Tammuz. He goes by many names, even Jesus the Christ. He has many names and many forms. Many names and many forms. He's coming up out of the pit. He is the first and the Messiah and the last. He's the first to be worshipped by all men, and he will be the last false Messiah to be worshipped by all men. He's coming back. Come on, read, little one.
And they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast.
Of course, because he indwells in him. Read.
And they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast?
Who is like the beast? Who is like Nimrod? Come on.
Who is able to fight with him?
Who is able to fight against him? Nimrod went about, it's called a mighty man, who went about conquering. He conquered the whole earth by might and by strength, and there was none able to stand against him. This is his forte. Come on, read.
And he was given a mouth speaking great matters and blasphemies. And he was given authority to do so 42 months.
And he was given authority to do so for 42 months, 3.5 years. Come on, read.
And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against Elohim. To blaspheme his name and his tent.
Yes.
And those dwelling in the heavens. And it was given to him to fight with the Kadosh ones.
It was given to him to fight with the Kadosh ones
and to overcome them.
And to overcome them. If those days are not shortened, no flesh will remain. And to overcome them. Because Hasatan will have a right to the flesh. To destroy the flesh. So that perhaps their souls will be saved. Death is coming upon this earth to judge all the stiff-necked. All those who have not life, all those who have not lain with their husband, all those who will not recognize his right to them, who have not gone down to the threshing floor, that intimate place, to cover themselves in the sheep, to have relations with their husband. He's going to have a right to them. And you haven't gone to that place because you do not believe. And you don't obey because you do not believe. You don't hear you don't believe, you reject the master's word spoken through his servant because you do not believe. Does belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous? It is the righteous who are going to Mount Zion, who are going to escape the hour of trial. 144,000 worldwide, 144,000 true believers worldwide. But this is talking about the unbelievers. Come on, read.
And authority was given to him over every tribe.
Over every tribe.
And tongue.
And tongue.
And nation.
And nation.
And all those dwelling on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life.
What did they do?
Of the slain lamb, from the foundation of the world, shall worship him.
Shall worship him.
If anyone has an ear, let him hear.
If anyone has an ear, let him hear. This will be most on the earth. Most. If those days are not shortened, no flesh will remain. But for the sake of the Kadosh ones, those days will be shortened. Very few Kadosh ones will be left when the master returns. Very few. Very few will remain. Very few will remain. True belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous in this season. 144,000 true believers separated unto life versus 7 plus 7 billion separated unto wrath. Come on, read.
He who brings into captivity shall go into captivity.
He who brings into captivity must go into captivity. I told you a greater captivity was coming. Just like there's a greater separation going on now, a greater captivity is coming. Some of you still maybe watch those truth channels. You still maybe watch those YouTube truth channels, and you've heard of the FEMA camps. You've heard of what the FEMA camps are all about. You've heard of the thousands of guillotines that the U.S. government has purchased, and perhaps other governments around the world, the guillotines to behead those who are unruly. You've heard about it. There's a greater captivity coming. There's a greater one coming, but he has reserved a remnant people, those sealed with the living Elohim, to escape this time. True believers, 144,000 worldwide. True believers separated unto life, separated from death, separated from 7+ billion people, reserved for wrath in this season. Read, little one.
He who kills with the sword has to be killed with the sword.
He who is to be killed with the sword must be killed by the sword. Read.
Here is the endurance and the belief of the Kadosh ones.
Here is the endurance and the belief of the Kadosh ones. I told you, belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. You gonna believe, Ephraim. Before it's said and done, you gonna believe. Either you believe now, or the pressure of the great distress is gonna cause you to believe. And if you believe and if you endure during the great distress, you will live. Even if that means the destruction of your flesh. You will live. You will live. Believe now. Believe later. You're going to believe. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. Belief is going to separate the righteous from the unrighteous even during this time. As those who believe and endure are not going to bow down to this image that we're getting ready to read about. Reminiscent of those 3 Ivory boys. Those who believe are not going to bow down. But hear him. When those 3 Ivory boys entered into the fire, there was a shield of belief with them. We have the understanding now that the shield of belief is the Ruach HaKadosh. It is the Mashiach. During this time, the master is going to remove himself from the earth. He's going to remove the light. The light must be removed in order for darkness to rule. Because light and darkness cannot coexist together. If the kingdom of darkness comes, then the reign of light must be removed. He's going to remove his Ruach. He's going to remove his spirit. And so that Ruach HaKadosh, the same Ruach HaKadosh, the shield of belief that was in the fire with those 3 Ivory boys. If that means that you are reserved for this time and you have to go into a fire because you refuse to bow down to that image, that shield of belief is not going to be in there with you to protect you from that fire. Flesh is going to be destroyed. Those that appear around the throne in Revelation 7 of every nation, tribe, tongue, and people of Ephraim coming out of the great distress, they are appearing around the throne. They have put off the flesh. They have put off the flesh. Their flesh has been purged, has been purified, has been washed, and they have been made now ready to receive the bridegroom. They've been made ready now through trial, through tribulation, through persecution, through death, and through belief. They have now been made ready. The master is calling a remnant now, right now, to a greater level of belief. If you believe the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, bear the fruit. Bear the fruit of your belief. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief in this season will save your life. Yahuwah will save your life and keep you from the hour of trial that is soon to come upon the earth. The shield of belief is still with us in the earth. He is with us. He is our shield. He is our armor. And he is still with us in the earth. In this time, at this time, he is going to remove himself for a time and a half. He's going to remove himself. And there's going to be a famine in the earth. Not one of food, although a famine of food is coming. But I do not speak of one of food. I mean a famine. I speak of a famine of the word of Elohim. The word will not be heard. The fishermen will be gone. The hunters will rule. Men will search from land to land and sea to sea and from east to west, looking for the word and looking for Elohim, but will not find him until the time of the hour of trial has concluded. That shield of belief won't be in those fires. Although you must have belief, you must hold on to that which you have, lest you lose your crown. You must hold on, and you must not be afraid to die, because the shield of belief is not going to be in that fire, because he's going to remove himself during this time. Hear his words. Hear his words. Go down to the threshing floor, have relations with your husband, receive the seal of the living Elohim. True belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief will save your lives, Yahuwah, in this season. And do not think, Yahuwah, that your belief is not going to be proven and not going to be tested. Your belief is going to be tested. It's going to be tested beyond which you think you're able to believe. As that sifting, that greater sifting continues to take place. As he sifts from among men, 144,000 worldwide. Your belief is going to be tested unlike you've ever been tested before. Mount Zion is not going to simply be given to you. You're going to suffer. You're going to suffer, and your belief is going to be proven, Yahuwah, as this sifting goes forth. As a sifting between 7+ billion and 144,000, your belief is going to be tested. Even during this time of the hour of trial, belief is going to be tested. The only difference is, Yahuwah, the shield of belief is still with us. The Ruach HaKodesh is still with us. Our shield is with us. He will not be there when Hasatan, when death comes to rule. Death will have a legal right to rule over all flesh for 3.5 years, as it reads. He's going to have the right to overcome even the Kadosh ones. Come on, read, little one.
And I saw another beast coming out of the earth.
Come on.
And he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon.
This is the false prophet. Read.
And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and caused the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed.
This is Nimrod. He's always been worshipped. He continues to be worshipped now, whether it's in a church or whether it's in a synagogue, or whether it's in some Buddhist temple. He continues to be worshipped until this day. Whether you are religious or non-religious, you worship Nimrod, you worship the devil, if you're not in a covenant relationship with Yahuwah. You are in the field of the earth, and a greater man that's stronger than you has seized you. He has seized you. You that belong to another, you that has been purchased. And you have 2 choices. Either cry out or freely lay with that man. If you freely lay with that man, both you and that man are going to die. If you cry out, he will send deliverance. He's done so. There's precedence. There's witnesses. When a greater man, do you not understand that Pharaoh represents Hasatan? When Pharaoh seized our ancestors, when one greater and more powerful than them seized them in the field of the earth, to lie with them and to force them to worship the Elohim of Masraim. When they began to cry out under Ha's bondage, he sent deliverance. Thus the Torah declares, if a man finds a maiden betrothed to another and seizes her in the field and lies with her, both him and the woman are to die, him because he is laying and humbled another man's wife, and her because she did not cry out. You got to cry out, woman. You must cry out. You don't have much time to cry out. You don't have much time before death manifests and comes in flesh. You do not have much time, even if you're not a religious one, or what they call a spiritual one, or what they call a spiritual one, or whether or not you're one in covenant with the master. If you have the discernment of a gnat, you know that we have embarked upon a season unlike the earth has ever seen before. And even the time that we're in during this so-called COVID virus, this pales in comparison. This distraction called COVID pales in comparison to what is getting ready to come upon this earth. Come on, read, little one.
And he does great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from the heaven and the earth.
And the unbelievers are going to believe, because the unbelievers seek a sign. They seek a sign. The Torah, the prophets, and the writings is not enough. They seek a sign. Come on, read, little one.
And he leads astray those dwelling on the earth.
And he leads astray who?
Those dwelling on the earth.
And he leads astray those dwelling on the earth. You precept this with Matthew 24. It reads there that even some of the Kadosh ones are going to be deceived. Even some of them who call themselves Kadosh ones, who believe in the Mashiach and keep the commandments of Elohim in accordance with Revelation 12, are going to believe him. They're going to believe. and they're going to perish with their husband. Come on, read, little one.
Because of those signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth, to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword, yet lived.
He's now making an image to the same beast that was there in the first Babylon. He's the same image. He's the same image. And there's nothing new on the sun because the earth is Babylon. Revelation 17, Revelation 18. The earth is Babylon. And the whole earth, not just America. It says the whole earth is going to worship him. Every nation, tongue, tribe, and people, everywhere is going to worship him. America is not Babylon. America is a part of Babylon. The whole earth is Babylon. The whole earth is Egypt. And Pharaoh is coming to rule. Nimrod, the sovereign of Babylon, is coming to rule. And no different, as there is nothing new under the sun, they're going to bow again and worship the image. Those who are unbelieving, because of signs and wonders, they are going to believe. And you're going to perish with your husband. Come on, read.
And there was given to him to give spirit to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast.
As many who would not worship the image of the beast were killed, no different than Daniel 3. As many as many who would not worship it, just as it reads in Daniel 3, were killed. Were killed. Not just thrown into the fire, but killed. Those 3 Abarit boys, the shield of belief was with them. That shield, the Ruach HaKadosh, is not going to be with those left to the hour of trial. It says to kill them. To kill them who would not worship the beast, who would not worship the image of the beast. To kill them. To kill them. Even then, you're going to have belief. Believe now. Receive the seal of the living Elohim and save your life. Believe then. Believe then. You still save your life. The flesh may not be saved, but your lives will be saved. Your souls will be saved because you refuse to bow down to the devil. Come on, read.
And he causes all, both small and great, and rich and poor, and free and slave, to be given a mark upon their right hand or upon their foreheads, and that no one should be able to buy or sell except he that has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's the wisdom. He who has understanding, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
It is the number of a man. This is this is none other than Nimrod. This is none other than Nimrod. So believe. Believe. Believe now. Believe now and perhaps receive the seal of the living Elohim in this greater separation as 144,000 true believers are being separated from the rest. Believe now. I believe then, but you're still going to have to believe. The only difference is then your belief is more than likely going to lead to you being killed. You're going to have to stand. You're going to have to endure because you refuse to heed the voice, the words of the master now. Belief always separates the righteous from the unrighteous. It's going to separate the righteous from the unrighteous during the great tribulation, during the great distress. It is separating the righteous from the unrighteous during this greater separation. As 144,000 true believers are being separated worldwide now. 144,000 worldwide true believers are being separated unto life. 7+ billion are being separated unto wrath. It is belief that separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief in this time, in this brief season, in this brief speck of time that we have now before death comes to this earth. True belief will save your lives. True belief will save your lives. Heed his words. Heed his words. Do not harden your heart. Do not stiffen your neck. Go have relations with your husband. Line upon line, precept upon precept. Here a little, there a little. True belief, as the greater separation continues. True belief will save your life. True belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief has always separated the righteous from the unrighteous. Whether now or whether later, True belief always separates the righteous from the unrighteous. There are many who say that they believe. Many who say that they believe. And many of those who say that they truly believe are going to be separated unto wrath in the great distress because they truly don't believe. Because their fruits, they do not have the fruit of belief. They do not display the fruit of righteousness. They declare with their mouths that they believe, but they display the fruits of unrighteousness, thus declaring by their works that they are not righteous. And being unrighteous, they do not believe. Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6. The greater separation continues. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief, Yahuwah. True belief. He's talking to Yahuwah again now. And to those of the nations who would repent and who would engraft into the house of Yahuwah. He's talking to you again now. As Daniel 3 is the whole chapter, Daniel speaks to the house of Yahuwah. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. He's talking to you now, Yahuwah. That true belief is going to save your life. True belief is going to separate you amongst 144,000 worldwide. It's going to separate you from 7+ billion reserved for wrath. Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6 in its entirety, beginning at verse 1. Read, little one.
It pleased Darius to appoint over the reign 120 viceroys to be over all the reign, and over them 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, so that these viceroys should give account to them, and the sovereign suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and viceroys, because an excellent ruach was in him.
He was righteous. Hear him. He was righteous. He was believing. He was believing. He was believing. And he was righteous because he believed and feared and reverenced Yahuwah. He did righteous works. He obeyed the Torah. He did righteous works because he believed. Yes, behold, he comes quickly, and his reward is with him, to reward each according to his works. Do not listen to the false pagan Christian doctrine. You must obey. You must obey the Torah. No one's told you to go and slit the throat of a bull, a goat, or a sheep. You do so, you do to your own peril. We have a greater offering that is ascended into Shamayim, that is a continual offering, whose name is Yahushua HaMashiach. Nevertheless, you must obey the Torah. You must obey the Torah. You must obey righteousness. He believed and he obeyed. If one believes, then he will display the fruits of righteousness that leads to everlasting life. If one does not believe, he will not display the fruits that leads to everlasting life and the fruit that will lead to Mount Zion. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. Come on, read, little one.
And the sovereign planned to appoint him over all the reign. Then the governors and viceroys sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the reign, but they were unable to find occasion or corruption, because he was steadfast, and no negligence or corruption was found in him.
He was trustworthy. He was trustworthy, and there was no falsehood found in him. I wish somebody would turn to Revelation chapter 14. He was trustworthy, verses 1 through 5. He was trustworthy, and there was no guile, no falsehood found in him. He believed. He believed, and because he believed he was righteous, he did righteous works. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. Belief will save your life in this season. Come on, read, little one.
Then these men said, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, unless we find it against him concerning the laws of his Allah. Then the governors and viceroys tumultuously gathered before the sovereign and said this to him, Sovereign Darius, live forever. All the governors of the reign, the nobles and viceroys, the governors, the counselors, and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal decree and to make a strong interdict that whoever petitions any Allah or man for 30 days except you or sovereign is thrown into the den of lions. Now, or sovereign, establish the interdict and sign the writing, so that it is not to be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not pass away. So sovereign Daraush signed the written interdict, and Daniel, when he knew that the writing was signed, went home, and in his upper room with his windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his Yahuwah.
A righteous man. He believed. He believed, and because he believed, he did the works of righteousness. What are the works of righteousness? Obedience to Torah. What does the Torah say? We're to bring continual offerings. This is the Torah. Numbers chapter 28. We're to bring continual offerings. This is the Torah. If you believe, you'll bring continual offerings. In Numbers 28, it says 2 times a day, in the morning, at the time of the morning offering, and at the time of the evening offering. We understand that these offerings are a representation or a shadow of Yahushua HaMashiach, our continual offering, who has ascended into Shamayim and entered into the most kadosh place, not by the blood of bulls, goats, and sheep, but by his very own blood, sprinkled upon the mercy seat, and sprinkled in front of the mercy seat, and by his very own dung has he entered the most kadosh place and set apart the most kadosh place. He is that offering. He is that continual offering of a lamb in the time of the morning and the time of the evening offering. This pointed towards him. Daniel doing it 3 times a day, being a shadow, being a foreshadow of how we are to continually obey the Torah while in captivity, how we are to continue to bring our offerings, to kneel down and pray, to bring him the bulls of our lips, but more importantly, to allow our lives to be an ascending offering unto him. To allow our lives to be a sweet smelling aroma into his nostrils. To allow our lives to be as the blood of grapes poured upon the ground. To allow our lives to be kadosh and acceptable unto him. For this is our reasonable service. For if you simply bring the bulls of your lips, and if you simply go down to pray, and your life is not well pleasing unto him, then you are as a minstrel's rag unto him. You are as a minstrel's rag unto him. He does not hear your prayers. For the one that turns his way from doing the Torah, even his prayers, is an abomination to him. Our lives, which are not our own, must be an ascending offering as we die daily. As we take up our stakes of suffering and suffer with him, our lives must be an ascending smoke. Our fruit, the fruit of righteousness, must be an ascending smoke. Must be the blood of grapes poured upon the ground. A sweet savor must be the best of the oil, the best of the wine, the best of the first that splits the womb, the best of the first that comes from the soil, a well-pleasing first fruit offering unto him. Our lives. Our lives. Daniel here going 3 times a day, showing a shadow of what is to come, showing that even in captivity we must obey the Torah, and we must continually bring him his offering, bring him his food at the appointed times. But 3 times a day here, facing towards the house, facing towards Jerusalem, the place where the offerings took place at the time of the morning and evening offering, but he instituted the time of a noon offering at the 6th hour of the day. Why? Because these are the times of which the Mashiach, those of you Zoom, you know this, but this is the time that the Mashiach hung upon the stake. He was nailed there at the 3rd hour, the morning hour, 9 a.m., and he hung there through the 6th hour, which is 12 p.m., when the whole earth went dark. From the 6th to the 9th hour, I say again, when the whole earth went dark, because he is our Passover lamb. He is our Passover lamb, and he came in the volume of the book. The Torah declares that we are not to break one bone of the lamb, of the Passover lamb. Thus, when they came to him in John chapter 18, John chapter 19, to break his bone because the Passover was drawing near, he was already dead. Thus, the scriptures, him coming in the volume of the book, was fulfilled. Not one of the bones of the Passover lamb was broken. The book, the Torah, also declares that the lamb is to be slain at dusk, between the evening, at the time just before dark. The lamb is to be slain and eaten at dark, because the Passover lamb is slain to deliver us from the kingdom of darkness and to bring us into his marvelous light. But I say the earth went dark because he came to redeem mankind. He came to redeem his firstborn son, Adam. He came to shed his life, to pour out his life for man, for Adam, upon the ground. From the place from whence man came, the whole earth went dark, showing that he came to redeem all the earth, all men. Thus, that bride's price is for the whole earth. It's for all the nations. It's for all the earth, whether you receive them or not. It is of no consequence. A bride's price has been paid for you. He is your master. Submit to him now, submit to him later. Bow now, bow now. But you're gonna bow. The text declares that every knee gonna bow and every tongue gonna confess. Bow now, bow later. But you're going to bow. He is your master. Give him what's his. Give him his marital rights. You cannot not give it to him. Your body is not your own. He has purchased you. Earth, nations, Gentiles, Ephraim, he has purchased you. You belong to him. The whole earth went dark from the 6th to the 9th hour. In the 9th hour, which is the time of the evening offering, he gave up his breath. Thus here in captivity, we bring him an offering. The 3rd, the 6th, and the 9th hour. But your lives, hear him, your lives had better be a continual offering, 24/7. Continually. Our lives must be a continual offering, not just at the 3rd, the 6th, and the 9th hour. Our lives must be a continual offering unto him. He gave up all for us. We must give up all for him. We must suffer with him. And in suffering, we will be tested. Our belief will be tested. We will be proven. As this righteous man here is getting ready to be proven, his belief is getting ready to be tested. If you are one righteous and desire to follow the Mashiach and desire to follow the true Elohim of YAHUAH'S, you will be proven, you will be tested. All men will hate you. You will be proven and you will be tested. And we must display the kind of belief, Yahuwah, that this Yahudi man is getting ready to display. We must display a higher level of belief. And displaying this higher level of belief, understanding that the shield of belief is with us. This higher level of belief will save our lives in this season. I draw your attention again to Revelation 12. The adversary is going to chase us into the wilderness. We're going to face him face to face. We must believe. We must believe. Belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief will save our lives in this season as the greater separation continues. The greater separation separating true believers from 7+ billion reserved for hell, who must prove their belief in the fires of the great distress. Read, little one.
As he had done before. Then these men tumultuously gathered and found Daniel praying and entreating before his allure. Then they approached the sovereign and spoke concerning the sovereign's interdict. Have you not signed an interdict that every man who petitions any allure or man within 30 days, except you, O sovereign, is thrown into the den of lions? The sovereign answered and said, the word is certain according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not pass away. Then they answered and said before sovereign Daniel, who is the one of the sons of the exile from Yehudah. Pay no heed to you, O sovereign, nor for the interdict that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the sovereign, when he heard these words, were greatly displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him.
Because he's a righteous man. Because he was a righteous man. As Abraham was a righteous man, and all the people of the land, they loved Abraham. All the Gentiles, they loved him. Even the kings and the sovereigns, they loved him. In accordance to the book, and in accordance with the book of Yashar or Jasher, they mourned him for 1 complete year, because he was a righteous man and he was good to all men. He showed the fruit of righteousness. He showed true belief, even as he himself was thrown into the fires of Nimrod. He showed true belief, the true belief requisite of someone in covenant with the master, of someone who is a Yahudi. If you are in covenant with him, one of the things that are the identified markers of you is belief. Is belief, because belief, as the master has taught us, is ruach. As ruach, as belief in the Abaric tongue is the word amanah. Amanah, aleph, mam, nun, and hey. Aleph, mam, nun, and hey. We understand that mam represents spirit, it represents water, but water always represents spirit. And the aleph is a representation of an ox, which is a representation of power. We understand that the nun is represented by a seed, an heir, an inheritance. And so we see that the seed of the master, that those who are his heirs, that those who are his inheritance, we have his ruach. We have his ruach, and to have his ruach and to be his heirs is to have belief, because we cannot have his ruach. We cannot go down to that threshing floor to have relations with our master, with our husband, without having belief. He is belief. He is ruach. He is amanah. One cannot have amanah without him. Come on, read little one.
Then these men tumultuously gathered before the sovereign and said to the sovereign, Know, O sovereign, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that any interdict or decree which the sovereign establishes is not to be changed. Then the sovereign gave orders, and they brought Daniel and threw him in the den of lions.
Wait, lion.
Oh, lions.
Plural. So there's more than one little one?
Mm-hmm.
Little one, you know that I used to like to watch nature channels, right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to like that. And I just happen to know that a well-fed male African lion that is healthy, little one, can reach well over 500 pounds. 500 pounds of muscle, teeth, and claws. The text says lions. I happen to know, little one, that a well-fed female African lion can reach over 400 pounds. So you got lions here, more than likely, male and female lions here. More than likely African lions here in this den. Little one, you think you got to have a little belief? Just a little bit? Just a little bit. Yahuwah. The master is, hear him. This is the belief of a Yahudi man. This is the belief of someone in covenant with him. Without belief, it is impossible to please him. Before we can come to him, we must first believe that he is, and he is a rewarder of them who diligently seek him. Daniel had no fear. This is a man who bore the trait and the characteristics of someone in covenant with the master, and that is Amonah. That is the shield of belief. He believed. Just like the 3 Abarite boys, and just like his father Abraham, and just like all of his righteous fathers, he believed. And he believed that the master would shield him. That he would not allow his righteous being to perish in there amongst those lions. He believed that the shield of belief was going with him. This is a covenant man. This is a Yahudi man who had spoke with messengers. who had a close relationship with the master, of whom the master had spoken to, although he'd never seen him, of whom he had spoken to. This is a man full of belief and full of the works of righteousness. True belief. The true belief of a Yahudi man will save your life. True belief in this season, Yahuwah, will save a life, will save our lives. True belief in this season is separating the righteous from the unrighteous. He's now in a den of lions. Read, little one.
But the sovereign spoke and said to Daniel, your Yahuwah whom you serve continually, he himself delivers you. And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the sovereign sealed it with his own signet.
Daniel opened not his mouth as he went into that lion's den. The text doesn't say he yelled, screamed, that he begged. He opened not his mouth and went into that lion's den. Read.
And with the signets of his great men, that the situation concerning Daniel might not be changed. And the sovereign went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no entertainment was brought before him, as a sleep fled from him. Then the sovereign rose up very early in the morning and hurried to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he called with a grieved voice to Daniel. The sovereign spoke and said to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living Yahuwah, has your Yahuwah whom you serve continually been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the sovereign, O sovereign, live forever.
Rock Yahuwah.
My Yahuwah has sent his messenger and has shut the lion's mouth, and they did not harm me.
My Yahuwah has sent his messenger. Little one, I believe that's the messenger of the presence. Barak Yahuwah. That's Yahuwah himself that came to check on his son. As he came to check on them 3 Abba boys. And he came and sealed up their mouths. 4 500-pound beasts, 4 500 pounds of muscle, teeth, and claws. He came to protect this righteous man who had the works of righteousness and who was full of belief. And because he was full of belief, full of belief, full of belief, belief comes inwardly, because belief is ruah. The shield of belief showed up to protect him. The shield of belief showed up to protect them. True belief in this season, Yahuwah, as we look at this righteous Yahudi man, will save our lives in this season. True belief is separating the righteous from the unrighteous, as the sovereign here knew beyond a doubt. Now here, the kingdom has transitioned to the Persians now. To the Persian Empire, as the Persians conquered the Babylonians. The first beast was Babylon. The second beast was Mede and Persia. The third beast was Greek, and the fourth beast that's going to last until the end is Rome. And so as this Persian king went down and saw that Daniel was there, that something that happened. Again, I draw your attention that signs and wonders are for those who don't believe. Therefore, the unbelievers. After this pagan king witnessed this, he believed. He believed. Yahuwah wants to make a distinction in this time, Yahuwah. He wants to make a distinction between his people because he cares for all men. It is not his desire that any should perish, Yahuwah. When that pit is opened up and those devils, those demons come up from out of that pit, of whom are going to be given the power to sting men for 5 months, with a sting that is so painful, with a sting that is so horrendous and so painful that men are going to pray to die, but death is going to flee them. But if they lay witness on one, having the seal of the living Elohim, not being bothered by these things, who is, as this pit has been opened, it's still a tree planted by the rivers. It's still a fruit-bearing tree during a time of famine, who is still a water-producing rock during a time of drought, who is still a light-producing lamp during a time of darkness. As this great separation occurs and this great distinction takes place, if I were them, If it were me, I would ask that person, who is your Elohim? Who is it that you serve? Who is your Elohim, that I may come to know him, that I may come to serve him? So that you, Yahuwah, may be that stake of suffering to lift him up in the earth among all men, that all men may be drawn unto him. That a greater distinction would be made. What is going on with him? Why is it that he is not being stung when this is occurred over the whole earth? All men are being plagued by these things. How is it that you are escaping it? Who is your Elohim? Akin to when one Jonah was trying to run from proclaiming to the city of Nineveh. And he embarked upon a boat, and Elohim followed him, and there was a great tempest that came upon the water. And all the men were wondering what was going on, because even unbelievers can discern the weather. Yahushua said it. This came out of nowhere. And they're wondering, where did this come from? And they started to cast lots, and they're wondering, which one of y'all Elohim have you angered? They went and did an inventory of the ship and found Jonah sleeping fast asleep in the bow of the ship, knowing full well it's got to be this one. It's got to be this one. We're in the midst of a tempest and we're getting ready to sink, but he's in the bow of the ship fast asleep. What did you do to your Elohim? Who is your Elohim? And what did you do to him? Jonah exclaimed what he had done, that he had run from him, that he had run from his assignment, and declared to them, if you don't throw me over, we're going to sink. The Elohim of whom I serve, the Elohim of the sovereign of Shamayim and Arutz, is going to destroy this boat if you don't throw me out of here. And they tried rowing unto land, but to no avail, and couldn't reach there. Finally, they prayed to his Elohim, hold this not against us. And they threw him overboard, and immediately the wind and the seas, they ceased. And just like anyone would do, just like I would do, to his Elohim, the Elohim of heaven and the earth, they slaughtered to him, and they worshiped him, and they did obeisance to him. As signs and wonders are for the unbelieving, and the master desires to do a great distinction, a great work through Yahuwah. But we must have great belief. We must have great belief, because there's some things that are coming upon this earth that's going to shake the very core of man, that's going to cause men's heart to instantly stop beating. And we must be full of belief and full of righteousness to be that light-bearing lamp during a time of darkness when it comes upon this earth, to give men that one last chance before the master removes us and brings us to his Kadosh mountain. Come on, read, little one. What did the king say?
Because I was found innocent before him, and also before you, O sovereign, I have done no harm. Then the sovereign was very glad and gave orders that Daniel be taken up out of the den. And Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no harm was found on him, because he trusted in his Yahuwah.
Because he believed. Because he believed Yahuwah. Because he believed. True belief. In this time, hear him. This is the consummation of the times unlike any other. Hear him. And true belief is going to save our lives. True belief is going to separate us from the unrighteous. True belief is going to save our lives. Many of you say that you believe, but you don't have this kind of belief. Do you hear him? You don't have this kind of belief. You go down to that threshing floor. You have relations with your master, because he continually fills us from esteem to esteem. You go down to that threshing floor. You have relations with your master. And if you have not had relations with your master, you go down to that threshing floor. You submit to him. He will fill us full of belief. And belief will separate his people from the unrighteous and will save our lives in this season. Come on, read, little one.
And the sovereign gave orders, and they brought those men who had accused Daniel, and they threw them, their children, and their wives into the den of lions. And the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces before they reached the floor of the den.
This is what's going to happen to the unbelievers. This is what happens when he's not present. And thus Revelation 13 is a stark contrast from Daniel chapter 3, where in Daniel chapter 6 here, where the shield of belief is with them. But in Revelation 13, the shield of belief is not there because he's removed himself from the earth. He's removed himself out of the way so that the man of lawlessness, so that death manifested in flesh can rule. And thus there it says that all who would not bow to the image were killed. The unbelievers left to strengthen their belief, to purge them, to wash them, to purify them in the fires of the great distress, to destroy the flesh, so that their souls will be saved. Read, little one.
Then sovereign Darius wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, Shalom be increased to you. From before me is made a decree that throughout every rule of my reign, men are to tremble and fear before the Yahuwah of Daniel. For he is the living Yahuwah and steadfast forever.
For he is the living Yahuwah and steadfast forever. This came through a sign. This came through a sign, and thus signs and wonders are for unbelievers. It's for the Gentiles. It's for the nations. It's for Ephraim. Come on, read.
And his reign is one which is not destroyed, and his rule is unto the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. For he has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions.
Signs and wonders are for the nations. Thus, he sends us to the nations. He sends us to the nations to call out the nations from darkness into its marvelous light, to all whom he will call, to perhaps save them from the hour of trial that is soon to come upon this earth. Read, little one.
And this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Koresh the Persian.
Barak Yahuwah. Barak Yahuwah. Thank you, Master. How we looking for time, little one?
2:06.
Barak Yahuwah. We're going to stop right here. We're going to stop right here. This teaching is too important. This message, this proclamation is too important to rush it. We're going to stop right here, and perhaps, Yahuwah willing, we will continue it on the fourth night. The greater separation continues. True belief separates the righteous from the unrighteous. True belief, Yahuwah. True belief will save our lives in this season. He's calling us to the threshing floor, not just the nations, but his people. He's calling us to the threshing floor to lie at the feet of our husband. He has a right to us. He's purchased us. There's a bride's price that has been paid. He has a right to lie with us, to have relations with us, to know us as a man knows a woman. And if he knows you, those words in Matthew chapter 7 are not for you. Depart from me. I never knew you, you who work lawlessness. They won't be for you. They won't be for you. He wants to know you. As a man knows a woman, he wants to enter you. As a man enters a woman, and he wants to enter into covenant with you. He wants you to be his covenant people. He wants to write his name upon your forehead. He wants to seal you with the seal of the living Elohim. He wants to seal you on board of the ark of the covenant. He wants to seal you within himself, and perhaps save you from the hour of trial that is soon to come upon this earth. But you must repent. If you believe, you will repent. You will repent. You will turn from your uncleanness. You will turn from your unrighteousness. If you believe. If you don't believe, you will not turn. If you believe, you will display the fruit of righteousness that would not only lead to everlasting life, but that will lead to Mount Zion in this season. And if you truly believe, your belief is going to be proven. Your belief is going to be tested in this season. As that greater sifting goes on, your belief is going to be tested as he separates the righteous from the unrighteous, the true believers from the unbelievers, 144,000 worldwide, saving us from the hour of trial that is soon to come upon this earth. It is my prayer, Master, that as your words continue to go forth to the four corners of this earth, this message of belief, the message in this season, because they do not yet understand what is coming upon this earth. They've heard, and even your children, even your son, Yehuda. Many of them believe that they are simply going to waltz and skip through the tulips, that they're not going to be tested, that some of the things that are coming that they're not going to see. But they're in for a rude awakening. And if they are unbelieving, then their unbelief is going to leave them here for the hour of trial as this greater separation continues. You are proving us. You are proving us. And those of us who passed the test, you desire to bring us to Mount Zion, to clothe us in white robes and to give us a song that no one else can sing. The one who do not pass the test of belief, who are not separated unto righteousness, will be proven in the fires of the great distress, will be proven in the fires of the furnace. Their robes will be washed, they will be purged, they will be purified in the fires of the great distress. Bodies will be stacked on top of bodies, many going to die. Almost no flesh will remain. And you will do so because you love them. You will do so because you care not for the flesh, you care for the soul. And you would rather destroy the flesh, the wicked flesh, so that the soul will be saved, so that they will be prepared to receive their bridegroom. It is my prayer that your people are hearing and that they are believing, Master, and that they are going down to the threshing floor at the feet of their husband, at the feet of their kinsman redeemer who owns them, who has purchased them, who has a right to them, who has a right to lay with them. It is my prayer that you increase in their belief, that the more they lie with you and the more that you lie with them and enter them, that the more that the belief is being increased. Such that these words that you are speaking to your children are not falling by the wayside. They're not falling on stony ground, and they're not falling amongst thorns. But they're falling on good soil. The seed, as a man plants a seed in a woman, a seed is being planted in them. Indeed, as a man fertilizes a seed in a woman, a seed is being planted in them, such that you will come and fertilize that seed with your living water. Fertilize that seed so that that seed will begin to grow and begin to bear life and begin to grow and a rebirth will occur. A birth and a rebirth will occur. A newborn babe will spring forth, a new creature, as if we are in you, we are new creatures. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new, so that a new creature will emerge, one reborn, not of flesh and not of blood, but of water and of spirit, born from above, having the seal of the living Elohim. Because that dirt, that soil came and had relations with you. You planted a seed, the word of the living Elohim, and the living water came and fertilized that seed, caused that seed to grow, to become a mighty fruit-bearing tree, producing the fruit that leads to everlasting life. Let your word not word return void. It's my prayer that this word is going forth as a hammer that shatters, shattering both chain and shackle, releasing your people from bondage, releasing your people from Egypt, causing them to cause to fall before the feet of their kinsman redeemer, the place where there is forgiveness for their sins, the place where there is covering for their nakedness. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, I pray. So be it, so be it, so be it. For those of you who are on YouTube, once again, we're grateful that you've stopped by to join us. We pray that you've been challenged, you've been edified. We pray that you've been encouraged. We pray that you've been driven to repentance, which is to turn from lawlessness, to turn back to Torah. We pray that you've been driven to a secret place. You've been driven to an intimate place, that intimate place of the threshing floor, to cover yourself, to physically cover yourself in a sheet, to declare that you are my covering. I am your bride. Come and have relations with me. Once again, for those of you who are on YouTube, if you desire to join us live for either our 4th day gatherings or our Shabbat gatherings, there's going to be an email address located in this video, in the video description box. Once this video uploaded, please use it. Email us, reach out to us if you have a desire to fellowship with us live, either on the 4th day, otherwise called Wednesday, or on our Shabbat gatherings. Until the next time that we meet, Yahuwah barak you and guard you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and show favor unto you. Yahuwah lift up his face upon you and give you shalom. Thus you shall put my name on the children of Yasharal, and I myself shall barak them. So be it, so be it, so be it. Shalom.